Okay, I have no idea why I don't have any sound right now, and I can't see myself on the screen. Okay, you guys, I could see me on the screen through my cell phone. I just can't, for some reason, see me on the screen here. I have no idea why. All right, hold on. Let's make sure. Let's get this together. So I can see the screen, but I can't. Okay, let me see if I can pull you up on the screen. Yeah, see, I can't see you on the screen.
I can see me on the screen.
You can see. Okay, now there we go. It was delayed. Sorry, you guys. Hello, 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 everyone. So sorry, I was having technical difficulties, and I have no idea why. But I want to introduce everybody to Joshua. I met Joshua through Austin, and tonight we're going to have a very interesting show. Um, so tonight we're going to talk about conflicts, and we're going to talk about them when it comes to um, abortions, rights. And we know, like, trust me, Joshua and I have been kind of going back and forth for the last couple of days about this. We know that it's a very, very, very sticky subject, but we're going to have the talks that we think that we should be having. And I think at the end of the day, we both kind of agree that there's like no right and wrong. So we're just going to kind of give you what we've got, and then um, we're just gonna take it from there. We're gonna give you what we've been doing and what our opinions are, and there's no right or wrong, and we're not attacking anyone. We just want to put the information out there and have these conversations. Would you say that's about right, Josh?
Yeah, yeah, that's accurate. That's accurate. Definitely
So,
accurate.
hello everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Hi everyone. Hello, hello, hello. I'm just looking through the comments. So please like and share this video. We are going to have a few other guests, but they're running late, so they're going to just pop on when they get a chance. But we are going to start it because we are on different time zones. So we're going to get started. So we wanted to talk about abortion. And when we want to talk about abortion, I want to reiterate that there is no right or wrong. We're not judging anyone for the choices that they choose to make. We're just going to give kind of our part about, since Josh, it's his first time on my platform, I'm going to give him the floor and let him give you some things that he's talked about, and we're going to kind of go back and forth with it.
All right. So, hello everyone. My name is Josh. I just want to put some emphasis on what she previously stated about I'm not trying to prove that there is a right or wrong answer when it comes to who should have more power and say when it comes to abortion. All I simply did when I researched a lot of this stuff was try to find why there is conflicts and why it can affect certain aspects of society when these issues go overlooked. And I will give people somewhat to the best of my ability because it's a pretty complex subject, but I'm going to try to word it as easily as possible so people can try to get some kind of understanding of where I'm trying to go with this. So when you hear the word rights and you hear it as a right, now a lot of things are getting taken out of context with that word right. And I'm not disputing whether it is a right or it isn't a right. I'm just saying that the word right comes with almost that guarantee that it's a given. And there's a conflict with this, okay? And there's multiple scenarios and there's multiple forces and mechanisms on why. Because I get that the woman has the body and she carries the child, and I'm not trying to take that away. And again, I'm not trying to say that there is a right or a wrong answer because, in my opinion, that you can't come up with one. You cannot articulate one. It's almost impossible because the underlying factor and the issue, just this is just one of the issues, is that it takes two people to create a life. And you hear the phrase a lot that that mother has a strong connection or a strong bond and a strong love for her unborn child, and that's true. That's almost a fact. People can all agree on that. But if we can all agree on that, then I think society can also agree that if the mother can have love for the unborn child, then so can the father. And then that also bears into another mechanism that creates a conflict. Well, if they both can have love for the child, then how did it come to the conclusion that the option, and I want to word it as option, the option to choose. You have the freedom to have the outpost or the goal or the option to go and choose an abortion, if that makes sense. So I wanted to try to see on how it just became a universal notion on why it is always the woman's choice on the matter, whether it's a yes or a no, or maybe. And I couldn't come up with one. I couldn't come up with a logical, I really could not. I've seen a couple people throw out, the argument of, well, the man can walk away anytime he wants. And that is true. That is true. But if you want to look at it from that angle, then you can also play an angle like this. Let's take, this is just hypothetical. Let's say a man is in a relationship with a woman. He has no intentions of actually making it a long lasting relationship, but they mess around. She gets pregnant. Now, let's say she decides to keep it, but he wants nothing to do with her. Now, he bears financial responsibility for 18 years of that child's life. So it kind of can swing both ways. And if it swings both ways, it creates a conflict because society has took on this universal notion that it only boils down to one person's option to choose. And again, I'm not trying to say that the man should have power to decide if the woman can obtain it or not. I'm not trying to argue that. All I'm saying is by no one actually acknowledging or trying to look into this issue, there's a lot of conflicts of interest that stem from this, if that makes sense, if everybody understands that. I don't know if you want to jump. Did you kind of get like where I was going with that?
I always mute when you're talking so that you don't hear like any background noise.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I definitely get it. And I think that like, as I've been looking into it, I feel like there, again, there's always like there's always two sides to this coin, like in any of this thing that we talk about, right? Because we can talk about like, it's my body, it's my choice, right? And then the woman has the right, if she decides to say, hey, I just don't want to do this. But let's say the man or husband, whatever role he is, he decides he wants it, she's going to do it and that's it, right? But on the opposite side, the argument to that would be, what if she wants to have it and he doesn't want to have it, but then yet afterwards, he still has to pay child support. He's still financially responsible. So like I said, there's always, I think, two sides to the coin on this subject in any regard. Like there's, you can say, I was looking into a lot of things as well as like, they basically talk about abortion when they consider like, when does the baby have rights? Like I've seen so many things about that. So they said, they usually say when the fetus is viable. That's the term they use. So I was like, when the fetus is viable. So they say the rule of thumb is 24 weeks. The fetus can basically survive outside of the womb at 24 weeks. Therefore, the fetus is viable. But then like the counterpart to that is with modern day medicine, fetuses have been able to survive prior to 24 weeks. So then how can we say it's just viable at 24 weeks? With that rule was done, I want to say in 1992 by Planned Parenthood, basically. So how is it that now with modern day medicine in 2021, a fetus can survive prior to 24 weeks? So like, where's the line, when people, in regards to when it's a viable fetus? But I think like there used to be a time when abortion laws started coming in where there were strict laws, like they needed like the spousal, you needed like your spouse's approval, or you needed like parents' approval in regards to girls, younger women and stuff. But now they got rid of that because they said there was harsh effects or harmful things in regards to having a free, not a free abortion, but like a less stressful abortion, basically. So they kind of like remove those things out of the way. But yeah, everything that I've looked into, I was like, there's always like an opposite. There's always a counter argument, is what I meant to say. You know what I mean?
Yes. It's
and
like,
unfortunately, like we're going to continue to have these issues because of the fact that there's no wrong or right. Like how, and I know people say, somebody wrote in the comments earlier, like if there's a heartbeat, that there is, that it's a child. And I think so many people would agree with you. But I've heard even arguments like, oh, that it's just a bunch of mass cells, right? Initially, it's just a bunch of cells. But then when that baby has a heartbeat, which is around 8 weeks, I believe, then it no longer is just a mass amount of cells. You know what I mean? Because it actually has a heart. So there's a beat there. So it's just very complex, like Josh said. It's like super, super up. We got somebody. Hold on. Let's welcome Mr. Casey.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hi, Casey. This is Josh. Josh, this is Casey.
Hey, what's up?
How's it
man?
going, Josh?
Going good. It's going.
Good. Good.
So we're talking about tonight. We're talking about conflicts of interest in regards to like abortion, father's rights. So some points Josh was bringing up was like if a woman decides to have an abortion and the father doesn't want her to have an abortion, like what rights does he necessarily have? And then the flip side, if she wants to have the child but he doesn't want the child and she continues to do it, well then afterwards she still gets child support for that child. So we're talking about the kind of like the arguments that go back and forth, because I think that there's so many different realms to this.
Yep.
And what's right and what's wrong, I think Josh has been looking for the last couple of days since we talked about it. And he's like, yeah, like there's, how do you say what's right or wrong? So that's kind of where we're at.
Interesting. It's a very, I have a, I'm going to say I have a very different stance on it than probably most males do. That if she wants to have an abortion, I think that is her position. It's her body. It's her choice. If the man is encouraging it, that's where I see as a problem, because my body, my choice type of situation, very similar thing. But the part that I don't agree with is if the man is pushing and saying, hey, an abortion is what's logical, it's the best decision for both of us, this relationship's not going to work type of place, which I don't know how you do, honestly, then you can't go and chase child support. That's my weird situation with this is I've had some friends that met someone randomly in a bar and they turned it out having a kid out of it. And then guess what? There was no relationship, but they still get to pay child support. So there is some ownership to their actions that need to be there for sure. But it's an awkward place. But I honestly think most of the decision needs to be done by females or by them and action from there. I don't think men have much to say in this conversation is the weird part to me.
See, and I think like for myself as a woman, I think I can understand both sides of that, right? I could understand how a man would say, I have no right. I have nothing to say with you aborting our child, because it takes a man and woman to make a child. So I have no right in that choice. But then I have the right to to support this child the rest of its life. You know what I mean? If they didn't want that, if that's a choice they didn't make. And then I think like for myself, I just think there's so many tangents to abortion. Like I personally believe in a woman's right to choose, but that being said, it's so much more complex than that, because I also believe that I don't believe in like second trimester abortions. I don't believe in third trimester abortions. I don't believe in that. And I personally don't think that it should be used as a form of birth control. And I feel like there's no right and wrong way to kind of like monitor that. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
Like, I feel there's no way to monitor that. Um, and I also think that, you know, there's people that are like, who like Christians who don't believe it at all and feel like their dollars should not be spent on abortion or funding abortion because it goes against their religious beliefs. So like I understand that and I respect that, but then I kind of tend to think, well, like, do we really have any control of where our tax dollars go? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think with anything, I think we don't really have control of that.
Nope.
And then I also feel like, even though I feel like, okay, well, if a woman decides like, hey, you know, she's wants to have an abortion, I think like first trimester, and then I think also like I don't, like I said, I don't support, or I do believe like in cases especially of like rape or something like that, I don't mind that being government funded because I think that person is a victim and dealing with a lot of things on their own. But it's just a slippery slope when we're talking about it. But I can see a man's view when he says, well, how do I not have any say? Like, this is our child. You know what I mean?
I'm curious. I don't want to talk a lot because this is a weird topic for me. But Joshua, I'm curious. What is your perspective with it?
So when I started looking into this subject, I came to the conclusion that from my understanding of this, from what I was trying to get out of this, is that there really is. I mean, you can have a strong stance on it and say, well, I feel it is the woman's right, and everyone is free to be able to speak and say what they actually feel. But when it comes to something with the magnitude and this much gravity to it, you can't really. I mean, you can say yes, it should be the woman's right, but how can something such so powerful as life, and it takes two people to create life? When did society come to the conclusion that it should only be one person out of the two that it takes to create that life that has the decision whether or not they keep it? Because I try to look, and like I said, this is a really sticky topic, and a lot of people don't like to touch it, but that's why I came to the conclusion where I wasn't going to really look for right or wrong answer and whose rights is to this. I want to look at it from, is this abortion and the promotion of abortion to the level that it is at right now, where it's so easily obtainable? Is this actually a healthy thing for society? Is this making men more relatable and compatible to women, or is it making men more hesitant to actually pursue a marriage or take that chance with a woman? Because love, a life inside of a body, whether it's carried by the woman or it was created by two, if you can say that the mother can have love for that unborn child, then you can ultimately apply that to the father as well. And love is almost a fathomable thing. You can feel that. So hypothetically, let's speak, the man was in love with the woman. He got her pregnant, but she just wasn't ready. She wasn't ready, and that's understandable. And she does the abort. She gets the abortion. That man could be emotionally damaged from that. That man might not be able to relate to women like he previously did. That man might be hesitant to have relationships with women. So if it can mentally damage a man like that, and it can, I think we can all come to a logical agreement on that. And we also know it can damage women. Then I just don't. I I'm not trying to argue the case on who should have the answer. I'm just saying it's a major conflict. And if it's a major conflict, then a lot of negative things can stem from this, like resentment towards women, hesitation towards women, men noticing that, well, the women can have the option to abort and bear no responsibilities, but if she decides to keep, I have to bear the responsibilities for 18 years, which is also another conflict. Then we shouldn't be promoting abortion as much as we are right now. We should be trying to make it as a last resort, because if you look up the statistics for abortion, I know a lot of times when they make the cases and the claims for abortion, they use rape and stuff like that. And that's an understandable claim and it's an understandable case to make. But statistically wise, majority of the women who seek abortion, they don't seek it because they got raped, and they don't seek it because you know some guy took advantage of them, even though it does happen. Majority of the time, that's not why they seek it. They seek it because they're not ready. They don't see themselves being with the person for a long period of time. And it's damaging. It's damaging men's perception on whether or not they should pursue a woman and make her a wife, because now she's no longer viewed as, well, that woman could be my wife someday. Now it's viewed more as a risk, if that makes sense. So that's where I was trying to go with this, because to me, you really can't the claims going back and forth about who should have the option. And I don't like to use the word rights because I feel like that word rights gets taken out of context a lot. And the more rights and the more people take that word out of context and apply it to a lot of things that aren't technically a right, it makes it more conflicting amongst other rights, if that makes sense. So that's what I was trying to go with this. And I've been doing it for 2 days, and every time I think I'm coming to close to an end, something else comes up. So it just it's a really, really interesting topic that I think a lot of people have just been hesitant, especially men, have been hesitant to look into because they've been approaching it as the who should have the say, why do we have say, instead of viewing it from is this really healthy for society as a whole? That's pretty much my stance on it.
I don't disagree with you. A lot of it, in my opinion, does come in the stance of what's best for the child. If it's a one-night stand that's resulting in a kid, no, that's not going to work. Like, how many of those relationships work? It's got to be a low percentage. I don't know those offhand, but it's got to be low, right? And the child ends up with a split up family and it doesn't work out well. And it's unfortunate. That is what what will unify everybody around this topic is the best interest for the child, right? That is what everybody really should be talking about. And so that's where I struggle saying abortion shouldn't exist, even though I am a Christian. I can come up with some reasons that it should exist. Like rape is one of them, and a broken family or a broken household is another one. Like if it's just not working and they just haven't formally got it done yet, then sure, it's not good for the child in that situation. So there's some reasons there. For us men, I hate giving us the short end of the stick because in a lot of cases we get it when the kid's born anyways. We get the short end of the stick in all of court and all of that stuff. Men don't get the respect they deserve. But honestly, women have, when it comes to an abortion, women could possibly experience more health issues than anything. And so that's why I'm still leaning to where it is their decision, because potentially you could cause a problem to where they couldn't have kids ever again. And that's where I can't say as a man, it's my choice to force that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I understand where you guys are both coming from. And what for me myself, like I think that and Josh and I kind of talked about this too, like instead of, you always hear, like, right, whenever someone's pregnant, the first option is abortion, or and so we talked about, like, it would be nice for other options to be available, not just when we're talking about abortion, but when we're talking about even prior to that, like self-care, right? Like, should programs like Planned Parenthood be talking more about self-care, like being safe? Should we be pushing more of women taking care of your body, right? Because the women does have to hold it, the woman has to carry it for 9 months. Things are going to change. So should we be talking about other things instead of just abortion? Because we kind of hear about abortion all the time. So I understand where Josh, when he said that, and I was like, you know what, that really makes sense. Like, we should be talking about all these other things. And I think one of the biggest problems is just the way we have kind of gone as a society, right? Like, and I know this is a really bad example, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you have people promoting WAP, right? And that's like the song of the year. They're making all this money. And you get into these, like, we should be promoting self-care, self-worth. Like, I think that a lot of, like, if we look at abortions and we look at where the Planned Parenthood, like, where they're mostly at, they're in a lot of Black and Hispanic communities, in a lot of minority communities. So for me, I'm like, well, you know, I think like, shouldn't we be having other options, or shouldn't people be focusing on those other options? Like, shouldn't we be talking about birth control? Shouldn't we be talking about, to me, like, I've always been like one of those women where I feel like, yes, birth control, I know that it has effects on women, etc. But I'm thinking for myself, like, I worry more about my body. Like, having unprotected sex with someone who I don't know, where now we're going to have this problem if, God forbid, this what happens, right? Because I would really hope that the amount of abortions are less with the couples, with couples that are actual couples, and have that community. They've been couples, so they can communicate better. They can get both sides. So I think that promoting like self care is big to me. Like, you should take care of yourself, period. Like, because I'm the last thing I'm worried about is getting a baby. The last thing that I'm worried about is having a baby. I'm worried more about the rate of STDs that are running rampant in America, period.
I agree with you. I can see that. The Just to kind of throw one a little bit in there, like, so you mentioned Planned Parenthood, and maybe we just need to do better in teaching our kids. I saw a comment in there saying don't have sex until married. Like, that's a logical thing, but to think, but is it logical to implement? Unlikely. It's very unlikely. I can tell you majority of people have had sex before they're married. And so to tell that to change in society is going to be tough. However, the part that could be changed slowly over time is trying to educate and just teach kids about doing things the right way and to be ready for it. And there are risks with your choices. And I think that's where the solution comes from, not necessarily government mandates or government or regulation or abortions being approved here or not here. I think they should be approved for certain situations, but educating kids is probably the most important thing. Like, hey, you could, your one action could result in 18 years of problems.
Yes, I agree with that. From my viewpoint and my aspect on it, and I'm going to emphasize it again, is you really, there can be a whole bunch of interesting angles on this topic. You know, there's a whole bunch of conflicting issues of what about this, what about that, what about this, and as I was digging into this, I was doing it for about 2 days, and I kept noticing that no matter what you do, you keep running into these conflicting issues. And I started to ask myself, well, why? Well, it's simple, because it takes two people to make the life. So naturally, they're both going to feel like they have some say in it. So I started to think some more, and I started to look into other things. And I think the main problem with abortion is because it's being promoted to a point where it's making sex come with less responsibilities. Because I mean, everybody knows no one's going to wait till marriage to have sex. Everybody knows that, this is a pretty, it's 2021. People are, society, humans are evolving. Their thought process is changing. That I can accept that. And I'm a conservative, and I know, like, I've come to the acceptance of that. Abortion's not going to go anywhere. No matter what you do, it's not going anywhere. So I started viewing it more from well, is this really helping out society? Is this really, I can accept that things change, and I can accept that, some things ain't going to go away, and some things that you might have, had some disdain for are here to stay. And I can accept that. But as we evolve as a society at that level, we also have to try to preserve certain things. And when you take responsibility out of sex, when you make it so common and you make it so lackadaisical when it comes with no responsibilities, then you lose the sight of love. You lose the possibilities to view all that is important and all that is beautiful in life, all that is beautiful between man and woman. And society becomes more secular as a whole. Society doesn't, men have a hard time connected to the woman and vice versa. And because there are so many, because that word right got took out of context on so many issues, there's so many conflicting patterns that play into this role. And I feel like if you look at the data and you really look at the stats on this, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. And I'm not saying I'm bullseye accurate, but I feel like I'm getting close to something on this, because you can see the decline in marriage. You can see the decline in even birth rates. You can see the decline in some of these things. And that's also a concerning pattern. So I ended up just completely getting away from who should have to say. I just X'd that out, and I just wanted to get down to the bottom, like, all right, this isn't going anywhere. I accept that. But is this good for society? Should we be promoting it at the level and the magnitude that we are right now? Or should we view this from, if it really isn't the greatest option, and we know that this option isn't going to go anywhere, it should be the last resort. And that was what I was trying to get really down to the bottom on this with, because it is damaging, the possibility of people creating families, and finding love. It is destroying that. Because when you talk about equality of rights, and even though I don't really look at this as a right, because it's too conflicting. There's two people that it takes to create life, and they can both become emotionally attached to that unborn life because they both created it. So if you talk about equal rights also come with equal responsibilities. And you can't have someone in a situation where it takes two people to create this life and then only apply those equal responsibilities to one side of it when the decision is made whether or not to keep it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. Like I said, I think that like I've been looking into like Planned Parenthood. I've been looking into like when abortion actually became legal. And of course, we all know that it became legal in 1973 with Roe versus Wade. So that's when it went legal. But then I started looking into Planned Parenthood, because as a minority, I know that Planned Parenthood are in a lot of minority communities. So Planned Parenthood was established in 1916. And then they started doing abortion in 1970 in New York. But abortion wasn't legal until 1973. So, and then like if you look at their page, it's like a lot of stuff on there. So I think like I would love for schools, right, instead of like trying to teach all this other new shit and this social justice shit, I would really love for them to go back to like health, right? Like health, teaching kids about their body, teaching kids how to be safe, teaching kids like, before, do you remember like I think I'm much older than all of you guys, but I remember them teaching you about like they were like so afraid to teach about STDs and stuff like that, right? When I think you should be teaching that, especially the high school kids, like, because it's out there, it happens, it's, and worst case scenario, it's either an STD or, God forbid, especially in this day and age, it's an STD or a baby. Like, these are your winning prizes. You know what I mean? If we're not doing what we need to do and taking care of ourselves. And I'm talking about boys and girls, both. I'm talking about both, because it takes two to make a baby. So I think they should be teaching them that type of stuff instead of worrying about all these other things that they're teaching them. And Josh, you made a good point about like the amount of abortions, I think was that you said, and where that's at now. Like, how far has that come from? And we talked about earlier during our conversation, we talked about not only the amount of abortion, how far that's come now, we also talked about how it does have effect like on families. Like, what's the divorce rate now? And of course, I'm not saying that, I'm not going to be a hypocrite and sit here like, yeah, everybody should be married. I'm not going to go down that road, because I've been with my significant other almost 19 years and we're still not legally married. So for me, I think like there's just so many things that happen. Like we have, and when we talk about kids, the reason I said schools, one of the main reasons I said like I think that should be taught in schools is because of the fact there are children out there, especially in today's day and age, who don't have mother or father, or they don't have both. They don't have, some don't even have one solid person to teach them the ins and outs of things. And I think that's why society is where it is today, to be honest, because we don't have that nuclear family set up anymore.
Yes.
So that's just another realm that we can go into. You know what I mean? Oh, let's welcome my other part of my just Miss Jantisha.
Not John.
Hi, guys.
We can't have her here.
Okay, so I don't know what you guys were talking about, and I'm sorry for interrupting if someone was like in the middle of a thought or something, but I was in the comments and I'm like, yo, I need to get on this because this is like I'm starting to get all like getting in it. So was somebody talking? I'm sorry, let me stop.
No.
Okay, so hi guys, hi. I didn't finish that. It was like a broken heart. It's like, meh. Anyways, it's been a good day. I don't know if you can tell, but let me just say this real quick. Now, we're talking about abortion, right? And everybody has this like this idea or this perspective or this or whatever. But really, at the end of the day, let's make sure we're getting one thing like straight. I'm pretty sure most of us have empathy for those who were put into a situation that they didn't ask for, that they were forced into something, if it was aggressive, if it was hostile, if it was all of those things. I'm talking about rape, I'm talking about abuse, I'm talking about all those things. I think we can all agree that we're not talking about, no, they can't have an abortion if that happened to them or whatever. Like these hypothetical situations of, and I'm not trying to like, I'm not talking down to anybody or a comment that I see, and I'm not trying to put anybody on blast or anything like that. But it's kind of, I don't know. I have never come across, I'm not saying that it's never happened or it doesn't exist or whatever like that, because anything's possible. But what I am saying is like, it's very, number one, the percentage of anyone getting pregnant from rape or keeping it or whatever, that percentage is actually really, really low, number one. Number two, I've never heard of a story where a rapist was like, you have to keep my baby. Number two. Number three, I'm pretty sure all of us agree that we're not saying they cannot have that if that was to happen, because those implications are crazy on someone's personal mental stability, like period. So if we can like separate that in our minds, we're not talking about rape. We're not talking about incest. We're not talking about sexual abuse. We're not talking about that. When it comes to abortion and whether it's right or wrong, or they should have it or shouldn't have it, or the father should have a say, whatever. We're not talking about that. We are specifically talking, we're gonna take that out of our minds right now. We're gonna toss it out the window. We are specifically talking about situations that we can actually control. Situations that we can make wise choices from, situations that we've learned over time, situations that we're teaching our children a different way. We're teaching our children those things. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about how we can, from this moment forward, because it's a big thing, how can we make a positive change to society and our community and especially our young people? How can we make a change right now, both mentally, physically, spiritually, on this subject specifically? We can all agree on that, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So if we can do that, then we can actually have this conversation without, yeah, but what about, or what about this, or what about, no. Those are all small percentages. They're all lots of hypotheticals. Let's throw that out, and then let's focus and have a real, genuine, honest, productive conversation about what we can do as responsible, wise adults, and how we can help the rest of the world kind of get on our page.
Can I just add something to that quick? Just
yes, of course.
Something that's a problem. So the reason why you have to add hypotheticals to a situation so complex as abortion is because it's the undeniable fact and the undeniable truth that it still takes two to create it. And you could view this angle from any type of hypothetical of your choosing. You could say, well, if you built 50% of that house and I built 50% of that house, but I want to keep the whole house, or I'm going to sell the whole house, that would create a conflict. And like I said, when I first started looking into the subject, I automatically, immediately ran into the problem, and I came to the conclusion that there's really no right or wrong answer. There's no really truth on who should have the option to make the final say. You can't come to that conclusion. I don't know how. It's almost mind-boggling to me how society has came to that conclusion on something so precious as life. And I'm not trying to argue the case that abortion should be abolished. I'm not trying to argue the case that it's wrong. This is just from a situation that I am trying to get to the bottom of, that it is a conflicting issue. And I feel like a lot of people avoid the topic of it being a noticeable conflicting issue because abortion comes with responsibilities. That's fact. If she chooses to keep it, the man has to step up and provide for his child. As a man, that's what you should do. That's a fact. Some men don't, but men universally know that that's your child, that's your flesh and blood. You take care of that child. That's also a fact. So the problem with this issue with abortion to me is it's promoted on a level and on a scale that is so big, and it's taken with such a grain of salt and no responsibilities when it has all these conflicting issues. And if you have something that takes two people to create, you can't automatically come to the assumption that it should just be this person's choice. And you could take into consideration a hypothetical of rape. Yes, of course. And my heart goes out to anybody that has to experience something like that. Nobody should ever do it. And I get those aspects of it. But I also get the aspect of it of sometimes men do fall madly in love with women. And sometimes women fall madly in love or madly out of love with men. And it could emotionally damage things. And then it's also making society overlook the beauty of marriage. It's making society overlook that sanctimony of family, of falling in love, the beauty in that. And it's just becoming people are just having sex and no one's really taking any accountability. I understand mistakes happen. I understand sometimes it happens. I get that. But it's happening too much. And it's getting promoted and no responsibilities are even getting looked at or noticed because it's getting promoted too much. So that was the main thing I was trying to get in with this. I wasn't trying to really look for right or wrong because like I previously stated, I keep coming to that stone wall of you really can't say who should have the overall final say in the option because it does take two to create. And I know everyone on here can agree. They've heard that saying, a mother's love for her unborn child. If you can apply that to the mother, then you can apply that to the man as well. I know plenty of fathers that were ecstatic when they found out their significant other was pregnant. And I know many men who were devastated when she decided to terminate it. So this issue it's a really, really sticky topic. You know, I've been on it for 2 days and I'm not even nowhere close to the bottom of this thing. But I just want to put a lot of emphasis on it, that I'm not trying to say who's right or wrong. I'm just asking the simple question on should we be promoting this to the extent that we are promoting it at right now currently in society, when the statistics are, with the main argument that they argue in favor of this is rape and those terrible situations that do happen, but happen at such a small percentage and nowhere close to the amount and the percentage of people actually getting them just because they're not ready. If that
Exactly.
Yes.
And to add to that, like if we're holding men accountable when a female, when a mother, a woman, whatever, decides to go through with the pregnancy and the birth of the child, if we're requiring them to step up, right, as is right, to step up and play a part and be a parent and all that stuff, then why are they not included or involved when it comes to whether that life is going to continue on or not? That seems pretty lopsided to me. And again, we're not talking about the hypotheticals. We're not talking about the special circumstances. We're talking about a man and a woman lay down together and consequences happens when the two of them don't take precautions. I mean, it's super simple science. It is what it is. 1 second, my husband's joining me.
What are your thoughts, Chelly?
So I agree. Like, so again, like I said, I think that like out of our group, like, I've kind of always been the one where I feel like I think our last show when we kind of like touched on it very lightly, and you were like, "Well, I don't feel like I have a voice, Casey." I was like, "Yes, you do." Like, I'm like a firm believer of giving everybody a voice. To be honest, I don't believe that. I don't think men should be shut out because they're men and it's not their body, right? I don't believe in that. In the same way when we talked with our show where one of Suni's guests like tried to shut you out because he felt like you didn't have a voice because you were white, so you couldn't speak on minority subjects, which I
You ran.
which I think is wrong too. Like that doesn't bring equality to the table. Like you're shutting him out because he's white. Like that makes no sense. So those type of things, when people shut other people down, it really bothers me because I'm not that type of person. Like I want to open the floor. I want to have these conversations. And I think that men should not be excluded simply because they're a man. Just a little story. Like you guys, well, I've talked about it before. I have I have children from different men. And in my life, like I never understood why it was okay for me to give them like visitation rights. You know what I mean? I thought that didn't make sense to me because I thought we're both parents. Why should I tell you when you can and not see your child? Or why should you just be given every other weekend? Why should you be given? So I've never been the type who thought like, oh yeah, I'm the mom and I'm gonna like um I get to like dictate. I just think it's ridiculous. So to me, I think that men do have a voice. Like I think everybody has a say in what's going on. You know what I mean?
I do. My like I said, my stance is a little unique in this case because there's just some weird situations. Not just what John Tisha mentioned, but I also know men that have been screwed over by this situation, like just people that women that took advantage of him because they found him in a bar, and now he's paying a crap load of money in child support because it just happened. Now he needs to take ownership of that for sure, but there's some interesting plays there. And honestly, is it going to get solved? I think this is going to be a topic in politics and in the world forever. There's no right answer. There really is not.
There isn't.
Let's welcome Chris to the show.
Whatever, he's ignoring you. He's
Chris is
I'm out.
Well, Chris and well, I know Josh doesn't know, but Chris and John Tisha are part of Just Us. So they're part of our regular platform. They just had I was cutting into their dinner plans.
You say hi?
Oh, I'm off mute. Yeah. What's going on, everybody?
Say hi.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, I was listening to what you're saying, and I agree. I only caught like the last maybe, I'll say half of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I caught a couple minutes, but I agree with what you're saying. I hear you. And yeah, so what are we really talking about? Give me the rundown, Charlie, or somebody.
You're in the group. You should know.
You want me to try to basically repeat what I said? So basically,
No, I want you to just what like just a gist of like what was the topic? I was working. I usually am up on what we're talking about, but what was the topic?
So the topic's abortion, and we're basically talking about not the rights, basically not the right or wrong answer on who should have the choice and whose right it is, but why it's such a conflicting issue. Like how did society get to the conclusion of the woman should have the overall final decision and the option to choose, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And me and Shelly discussed this a couple days ago. I did a something similar to this with her and Austin, and I started this 2 days ago, and I ran into the conflict immediately because you really can't come up with a definitive answer on whose decision it should be. I mean, society has came to a universal decision on it, but I know there has to be an overwhelming amount of men who kind of get the sense like, wait a minute, this is, you know what I mean? And the reasoning for it is because there really isn't no definitive correct answer. You can't, it's impossible. It's too conflicting, because the main truth that no one can deny is that it does take two to create a life. And if you can take, if it takes two to create a life, and people have thrown that phase that a mother can have a strong love for that unborn child, then so can the man. And that's what makes this a conflicting, very conflicting issue. So instead of coming to trying to search for the right or wrong answer, or try to say why men need more of a voice, I just completely stopped going on that route, and I started looking on the effects of the conflicting issues within it. And I started looking at stats and data, and it's not like an eye-opening amount, but it's slowly declining. Birth rates are declining. The probability of marriages are declining.
Yes.
Things of that nature. So I was like, so I changed my whole outlook on it. And instead, I just wanted to get to the core root of, is this really a good idea? Like, I know abortion is not going anywhere, but is this healthy for society as a whole? You can have the option to it. I'm not going to try to debate that at all. But should we be promoting it at this rate and at this magnitude like this, and avoiding these conflicting arguments because there's no answer to it? That was what I got out of that.
So I'll take a little different stance on this, because I know we've talked about this on the panel before, and I mean, I'm against abortion, period. And I'll say, like, in some certain circumstances.
Sorry.
She didn't do this the whole time until I started talking. It's all right. Anyways, so
My bad.
I'm against. There's certain situations where I'm like, okay, if it's on the table, maybe incest or rape, depending on the age. But I mean, outside of that, like, I even struggle with that, because I just don't believe in it. But I think often that I do believe that there is an answer, and often there is an answer to a lot of things, and it's often the simplest. And it's, if we didn't have any of the advancements in technology, if we didn't have any of the doctors that we had, what course would nature run? And that is the right answer. If nature would run its course, and a woman couldn't abort unless her body aborts naturally, then that would be right there. Hey, you are meant to keep this child. That is it. And that goes for a lot of stuff that we're arguing, like transsexual or transism or whatever it is. If nature was here, if we didn't have all these advancements in technology, nature's nature. And if you let it run its course, a boy will never change to a girl, or vice versa. I think that's the simplest. That is the answer. The problem is, you got a lot of people that don't want to hear it. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. Outside, I mean, and when it comes to marriage, to me, if you're spiritual, and you believe whatever you believe in, Christianity, we'll say that, but natural for that is, hey, you should be married and have a kid. I mean, but that's kind of my quick, easy rundown on that.
Side note, there was a comment that says men are never going to be able to have a voice in a woman having an abortion, because it would be taken further than that example, like what they eat or drink. Is it right? No, it's not right. Melissa Seals. I see where you're going with that, and I understand where you're going with that, but I would say, like, there's men who do that now, and they don't have to be pregnant, they don't have to be having a baby. There are controlling men, there are controlling women in this world that do those things. But in terms of, and matter of fact, there have been stories about surrogates having babies, and then the people who the parents who are actually going to get that child, they do that. They actually do that. They have a contract and stuff, and the surrogate is only allowed to eat or drink certain things or whatever. Like, that's a thing. So I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying like that already happens, and the female doesn't have to. And that's called abuse. It already happens in some instincts aspects. But as far as like, I don't know. I personally think that it's a little far fetched to be like, well, they're never going to have a say in whether their child is born or not, because they could take it further and tell them what they can and cannot eat. Technically, there's already recommendations and suggestions for what pregnant women should be eating, just like regular people who are trying to stay healthy and fit. So I just seen that. It just stuck out to me. I have no qualms or anything. I'm just saying, in my opinion, I think that's a little far-fetched.
And
Amy said, well said, Chris.
yeah, so let me see.
Brenda says adoption should be a better choice. It should be, but
Well, see, and that's where I go back to where, like, and I'll go a little bit further. I think I also don't believe that the government should be that involved in our lives. And because we've let them that involved in our lives, this is where the minority, and you're talking like it could be the 1%, 5% of people where they become the loudest and they dictate to the rest of us. And they have convinced so many people that this is what it should be because they have a right. And that's where I go back to like, hey, is it natural? No. I don't believe the government should be in our lives telling us really anything. I even go as far as like, and I've said this before, where I don't believe that they should be telling us who should pay child support or alimony. I think that should be left up to the individuals, because the second that you say, okay, hey, look, if you have a baby with somebody and the government, is involved in that, then that's where you get these conflicts of, well, some women just have babies with dudes. And I know women that just have much babies with dudes specifically just to make money. And that's where there's abuse of the system, because the government will go after each one of those men and take money. And now there are some women that are in that position too, but they're not as many. And I feel like because of that, it gives more power to one side than the other, and it gives more control to the government to be in your lives and control it. And that's where that dictatorship starts to me. Like that's what it seems like. I feel like if the government just stayed out of our business and let us handle our business, okay, maybe at first you might have some women that have kids and the baby daddy might leave, but I think it would self-correct. You give it enough time and women realize, or men realize that, hey, you really got to be careful of who you're having kids with. You'll stop having kids with just anybody. And you'll start looking at, okay, if I want to have a family, then one, I need to be in a very serious relationship or marriage. And that's that. And I think we could, if you were to take them,
self-correcting how though?
Self-correcting, because if you take the government out of it, okay.
Right, but then that would mean that society would have to step their game up and really take an active part in teaching each other and the youth to what to consider important.
You wouldn't even have to have that.
I'm not saying that that's not possible.
But you wouldn't even have to have that, because self-correction doesn't necessarily mean that somebody else is coming in and tell or showing you this. Maybe that's what I'm saying, not right away. But if, let's say right now, mom has 4 baby daddies and 4 kids, and the government says, hey, we're backing out of this. We're not going to do any more child support. We're not going to be involved in your lives. I guarantee you at that point, when she realizes that these dudes might just leave her hanging, she's not going to go after baby daddy number 5. Or if she's got 1, baby daddy number 2. And they're going to really think, they're going to have to adjust their thought process, and it's going to happen fairly quick, but we're not going to see the results of that. Maybe I'll throw it out there, maybe for like that generation, maybe her kids, she's going to be on them and be like, hey, young woman, if you have a kid with some dude, you better make sure that it's you guys are going to be together, because he might leave you, or say vice versa. Because I know dudes that have got left with kids. I got a couple friends at work that are single dads, and making sure that that's a choice you're going to make. And I guarantee you give it enough time, it will self-correct.
Because knowing the government is there gives them that leverage, that power that they know
Yes.
that they can lean on.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you take that same thought, take that same process. What I won't say a lot of things that are going on, but it's things when it comes to health and whether it's abortions or transism, like you take that same process and you just throw it out there. Is it natural? Yes or no? If it's natural, yes. Government, get the hell out of it, and our society will self-correct itself. Sounds like a lot.
Like a lot of work, or that was a
No, just-
mouthful.
Sounds like like a mouthful. A lot of self-correction.
Well, I mean,
I agree and I disagree. So let me say what I
Of course
disagree.
you do. Of course you do. No, that's why I like it, because I was waiting.
The reason why I say this is if you take away abortions entirely, how many abortions were there last year? 850,000 abortions were done last year. There are already 400,000 kids in foster care. So you potentially could be making 1.2 million kids put in foster care or in some other system like that. There is already 18 million. These are quick Google searches, guys. This is something I was doing real quick. There's 18 million kids already living in single parent households. This is where I struggle with the abortion idea to get rid of it, because you are adding more to the problem. Honestly, like I said earlier, education with kids, like, hey, if you're gonna have sex, you might have a kid, and you might be marrying that person. Like, you got to have that conversation and approach it in that way. I think that's the logical scenario. But getting rid of abortions is the part that I don't want to get rid of, because there are scenarios that makes too much sense. And that's what I don't want to get rid of, because if you were to put them all back into foster care and you have a whole bunch of kids that could be adopted, there's not enough people to adopt kids that will do that. And you're adding to another problem. And that's where I struggle with this stance. Is I see the need, but I also see the importance of it. The need to get rid of abortions, because there are some women that think it's birth control.
right.
But then there's also women that do it for money. They have kids for money. And so it's this weird sensitive area. But that's why I said I agree and I disagree. Is I can't remove abortions from my stance, even though I'm a Christian and I don't like it. What are you going to do with those other 800,000 kids? Let's say it's even half. What are you going to do with 400,000 kids? And where do they go? You're going to add to the single parent families, or they're going to add to foster care and adoption programs.
Yeah, but aren't those single families due large in part to government interference and incentive?
It doesn't explicitly say, because it says 15 million children live with their mother. 3 million live with their single father.
Right. And when did the numbers start upticking?
1980
When
is when
what
it really started skying.
and what happened?
What do you mean? What happened?
Changed? What changed in society? What changed in government? What changed in law? What changed in legislation? What changed in programs around that time for that number to uptick?
That would have to be
question. I don't know.
That'll be something we have to. I think I'm gonna have to look into that too.
Because it wasn't just like people were like, "Oh, this is the year. We're just gonna go for it." It didn't just, society wasn't just like, "Hey, we're gonna do that because it works." Something had to have happened. Government assistance, government interference. You know what I'm saying? Like society, culture, music, whatever. Like there had to be a change in the way culture and society was going at the time, plus government changes for that number to uptick, because it wasn't like that before.
Agreed.
So So if we take, so to reverse the effect, right, wouldn't we have to do the opposite? If it was because government, and this is because none of us know specifically that answer, but I'm pretty sure that's kind of where all that came from. If we reverse the government interference, and if enough of us, again, it's not going to happen overnight, right, are doing what we're doing and bringing awareness and positivity and the importance of family units and being responsible and accountable and all of those things and educated, wouldn't that reverse over time or no?
I think it would. Sure. And that's where I was saying, like, I think education is more of the solution than removing an option, but it takes time, unfortunately. Like,
So
it took time for us to get to where we're at, and you have to educate, and everybody has to agree. And what do we have in society today? A major divide that you're going to get everybody to agree. It's going to be difficult.
And that's what I was going to bring up, because you said education, and it's like, okay, so if we educate, you're talking as a nation, we would have to be on the same page, right? Now, like, let's go back to the 90s, right? Because I remember that probably the most. Like, they have DARE programs. Okay, the drug, I don't remember what it was called. I just know drugs are bad. And it was in our elementary schools, and we were all getting taught the same thing. And it works. It works, let's say, for some kids who don't have the support at home, it might work on some of them. But these programs or this type of education works the best when the parents also back it up at home. And to what you're saying, if we educate kids like Safe Sets, Sets Ed, if that's not being backed up at home, then we will still be in the same situation. It might dwindle a little bit, but school itself is not going to change society. It really is a cultural thing, and parents are going to have to want to do it. So if we continue with the abortions and we teach Safe Sets, well, we're just going to be we're going to be doing the same hamster wheel, running in circles, because you're going to have those people that are out there saying that, well, you can't be telling these kids what they can and can't do. I mean, hell, if they're going to let a little kid transition at 3, 4, 5, whatever years old, so to make sure that they go through the right, what is it? Puberty?
Correct, puberty.
If we want them to go through if they're allowed to do that at that young of an age, then here's the next step. And this is what I brought this up the other day. Like, we keep pushing the limit. So that's happening. Well, who are we to, like, I agree with you. Education's not bad, but who are we to tell, somebody else's kids that they can't do this? If the parents are going to let them go do it. And that's the society we live in, is we are so divided. And it makes it very challenging, which is why I always go back to, what does nature say? Because that is, to me, that is the solution.
Can I just I just want to throw something in there. So previously she asked, what was the cause or the creation of the population boom? And something crossed my mind that I started thinking about. And I don't know if anybody, I would assume that most people are familiar with Lyndon Baines Johnson. Correct. Everybody knows Lyndon Baines Johnson. He became president when Kennedy got assassinated. Well, prior to Lyndon Baines Johnson, the minority community, we'll just say it as a whole, was doing very well. The nuclear family within the minority community was at, I think, a whopping 70%.
Right.
Their work ethic was great. They were basically middle class. They were actually outperforming whites in the workforce at one point. And when Lyndon Baines Johnson became president, he passed something that was called the Great Society Program. And the Great Society Program was basically the equivalent today of the welfare state.
Yep.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
That's what I was getting at, you guys.
Exactly. And there was also other things that came. There was so much stuff within this that came with it that a lot of people don't really take into consideration that played a role in society today. And I'll try to break it down to the best of my ability. So he passed the Great Society Program. He said it was going to make sure that there was no inequalities, that, we're going to look out for the people who are disenfranchised. You kind of hear a lot of that now. And what that did was there were so many catch-22s with that. It destroyed the minority family.
Mhm.
After that was passed, it declined. But it also did a lot of other things that a lot of people, I feel like they knew about previously, but it gets overlooked. And what I'm getting at is that with the Great Society program, it incentivized women to have children that had no intention of staying with the men, because you could have as many children as you wanted and still get that guaranteed check from the welfare state, but you couldn't have a man in the home. And this led to many problems, because everybody knows with no man in the home, it's not a guarantee, but the child turns to a life of crime. The child gets caught up in the wrong things. The mother becomes stressed. She can't really manage it all by herself. And she has no choice but to continuously live off the state because she's got put in that situation. And the man can't step in to help, because if he does, then she loses the assistance that she's getting from the state. And there was a lot of catch-22s that people didn't see then that happened, that looked appeasing, and made women start to have sex irresponsibly, that created the boom. Now, when he spoke about the population boom, it also led me to another conflicting issue. If you speak about the population boom, then you have to assume that the Democrats and the people that fight so feverishly for the abortion rights, and I'm not debating on whether or not it's right. I'm just saying the people that fight so fiercely for the right, they have to know about the population boom. But they never speak of this. They never speak of this population boom. Every time they talk about abortion rights, they always bring up a case, and we already know, and we came to an agreement that it's a small percentage of the horrific things that might happen to a woman if she gets impregnated, and that's what we got to keep it. But they never talk about
the emotional pull.
So is abortion being pushed because of the population boom, or is it being pushed because these horrible things could happen once in a while at a small percentage, and we need to just make sure that we still have it as a right for them to be able to obtain it? And that's why you have to be careful on why you word things as rights or options to choose, because the more things you tell people are rights that aren't rights, they become conflicting with things that are actually rights, and then they trample them because the judge or the Constitution or the Supreme Court has to come to a decision on whether this thing they're saying is a right overrides this thing that everyone else is saying is no longer a right, and it expands government power. So that's basically what I just got from. I was trying to I had to turn my camera off because my brain was it was getting
No, that's exactly what I was getting at.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what I was getting at, because I had looked it up. I researched it and stuff. That's exactly what I was getting at, and what's been coming up over the last few, and what has been going on the last, as far as I'm concerned, that. But anyways, that I've really been diving into anything is literally the last 12 months. So that was one of them, and you're spot on. That's exactly what I was getting at. Something happened, which was that the program welfare, and then the stipulations in order to qualify for welfare that broke up the family. And Candace Owens talks about this all the time as well. And that's why we are where we're at. And then the government continues to make amendment after amendment after amendment after amendment and after amendment to convince or to help whatever. And again, just as a reminder, we're not talking about the special occasions or special circumstances or anything like that. We're just talking specifically about why and when this started and why it's still going the way that it is. Government control.
Casey, I have a question for you, since we were talking about kids being in the system, foster care. So, what I don't know if you know this, but what is a main cause of kids winding up in foster care?
What did you say?
Why are the reasons? Because I have my opinion on it and why I think some kids end up there, but I don't know if you did any research on it.
I haven't, but my opinion in theory is very similar to what Joshua just mentioned, is broken families.
Right.
And that's where, honestly, this is where I differ a little bit from. We can say the families are broken and we got to educate the adults. I think that's a lot harder than educating children.
But is that why they end up in foster care? Because of broken families? Is that what you're saying? I just want to make sure I'm following.
My theory is yes. I don't have any facts or numbers backing that. My theory is that is where they're coming from.
Somebody
one theory anyways.
Yeah.
They have posted in the comments earlier that because we have the morning after pill now, that there's no reason for abortion. So while you guys were like chatting, I was like looking into it. So I want to read this just because I want people to understand exactly what you guys are talking about and leaving out that minority part of it. This will make a little more sense. Give me 1 second. So it says basically there's been a substantial proportion of the 11% decline in abortion rates between 1994 and 2000 resulted from women's use of emergency contraception. According to the new analysis of contraceptive use among more than 10,000 U.S. women having an abortion between 2000 and 2001, 46% of women surveyed were not using a contraceptive method in the month in which they became pregnant, whereas 54% were using a method. The analysis conducted by this whatever Ellen Guttmacher, I don't know, Institute estimates that 51,000 abortions were prevented by the EC, which is that morning after pill.
That's a plan B, right?
Yes. In 2000, 47,000 more than in 1994, when only 4,000 abortions were averted through the EC. Overall, 110,000 fewer abortions occurred between 2000 than in 1994. If you look at this, if you guys hear my family, I'm sorry, my husband's really loud.
Nah, it's all right.
But it says it'll tell you like that the study found 46% of women having abortions were not using a contraception method in the month in which they became pregnant, including 8% who had never practiced contraception. Among the many reasons the women gave for not using contraceptive, the most were that they did not think that they would become pregnant. That was 33%. Thinking that having unsafe sex, they didn't think they were going to become pregnant. They had concerns about methods. That was 32%, including side effects and problems with methods in the past. And they did not expect to have sex. That's 26%. But if you look at these percentages, it'll like tell you the least. This is when you're talking about what things they bring up, and they always kind of go with the fact that women raped or women getting pregnant because of a traumatic experience. These numbers, they never talk about these numbers in which you're seeing right here. And again, I only found these because I was looking for, how the emergency contraception played key roles in abortions. So when you look at those numbers, again, when people kind of, I think they use that loophole as that 3%. I believe Tanya had said it was like 3%. So they use that as a loophole for all these other things, which, to be honest, they use loopholes in almost every law they put forward. So I don't think this specifically, but it was a great, because I didn't even really think of that at the time. But that is also another method if you're having unsafe sex, and you know that, let's say like it's a one night in a bar or whatever, like Casey had brought up earlier.
That is not true. What the heck? Why do you always do that to me?
She said it after the party.
You should definitely be choosing options. And that's the thing, like Josh mentioned, like, why are other options not being talked about a lot? Like, why are we not throwing that out there as well? Right? And when you look at those numbers that I just showed, it was saying there was like so many percentage of women having unprotected sex. And I'm thinking, okay, well, there's a missing link there, because how come no one is talking to those women? And again, women, and I'm not saying that men can't, but women can catch, if I'm not mistaken, I had did a paper years and years and years ago now, because I'm almost 50, but I had did a paper and it was on like STDs. So women can catch it twice as fast as a man, just because they have more openings in certain places. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I didn't want to use inappropriate.
And we're all adults here.
No, I didn't want to So I'm thinking with that percentage of a woman, like you would think, for me, like I said, that's always been just one of my main concerns is like self-love, self-care, like teaching our women that they can be, you know, if you're gonna do it, just be safe. Like again, you know, a baby is forever. You
It's
know?
education.
And
It's-
there are some
it is.
STDs that you just cannot cure, period. No one can cure them. They're going to be with you for life. Like we should definitely be, and men too. Like, I'm not trying to put this responsibility on women, but if the same women who say my body, my choice, well, then you need to take care of your body. That's a choice as well. And this is not to attack women. I just want to encourage you to look into all these things that we're talking about here.
Does anyone know when sex ed was taken out of school?
No, I think they still have it.
It's coming back,
Yeah.
but it's completely different. It's so I don't.
I know. I meant
Yeah.
traditional.
I don't want to use the phrase of like it's preposterous to me. It's absolutely outrageous. It's not even. It's just, there's so many things tied into this. I don't know what happens in society where they've gotten to the point where they don't realize that, you know, that children's brains are like sponges, and you're throwing all of these things, these complex issues that we as adults can't even figure out, and you're throwing it into a school curriculum with children. It's gonna damage them. It's absolutely gonna damage them. I don't understand where some of these ideas come from. And like, I'm all about new ideas. Like, I'm a conservative, but I'm not stuck in my ways conservative. There's certain things that I know I have to accept. I know that the world changes and sometimes we have to adapt and evolve. And oftentimes when people ask me, you know, why are you conservative? I say, you know, my best outlook on a conservative is somebody who is really good at articulating the real reasons for not having reasons at all, by just doing and saying what feels reasonable and has common sense. You know what I mean? Like, I can't explain, I can't give you a definitive answer on almost every issue. All I can do is try to say, does it make sense? Is it good for society as a whole? And is it conflicting and creating more issues than the issue that it's trying to resolve? And I feel like with all this feel good poppycock stuff that's going on right now, where they just get throwing everything with emotional viewpoints, with school, with sex ed, it's making I don't know where society's going to end up if it keeps continuously going this way. I really don't. It's scary to even think about sometimes, man. Honestly, seriously.
I agree.
You know what, in that conservative thing, you know, because I'm with you on that. And I think if you were to say you were conservative 30, 40 years ago, it would have been a little bit different. And we do adapt, because I say I'm conservative, but like my grandpa being conservative, he was conservative, and up for a long time, you know, gay was wrong. Me, I don't care. Like, I'm like, hey, you love is love. You love who you want to love. That's whatever, you know. But then on the same token, I'm not big on the transgender thing. Like, I just think that that's wrong. So it's, yes, as a conservative, I think some of us are moving along with the time, but I, like you, is it reasonable? Does it make sense? Is it natural? Is it logical? Whatever words you want to use for it. And if it's a no, then it's kind of a no for me. Man, I'm gonna have to do this, Casey. I got to go back to this real quick. Hey, so because you said, I think that's really struck me, the abortions and leading into foster homes. So here, I just wanted to throw this out there. My opinion on that is, I don't think, and I'll have to research this, but I don't think you have that many kids that, you know, or maybe we don't have the statistics. If you were to take abortions away, how many kids would be in foster care? The people that I know that were in foster care, some of them may be broken home.
You'd also have to take away that government interference.
Yeah, I think some of them broken home, yes, but I think a lot of why kids are in foster care are broken people, and that's drugs. Like I had a buddy. his dad gone when he was little. Mom moved. I don't know if she got deported or she moved back to Mexico, but she was gone pretty much his whole life. He lived with grandma, and at one point, grandma couldn't do it. She couldn't take care of him and the other two brothers, and he wound up in foster care. To me, I agree. Broken family. I think it's a lot of has to do with broken people, and I think if we were to pull up the data to see why these kids are in foster care, my opinion, I think that a lot of it has to do with drugs, and very few of it has to do with people just turning away their kids and saying I don't want them.
Some people do. It's
I know,
a small
some-
amount,
no,
there are some people who do.
Yeah, they're just like forget it, and I get
Like
that.
for example, like if their spouse cheats on them and leaves them with the child, and they're like utterly heartbroken and dismantled, they just can't do it anymore. I'm not
So
saying that's the majority of them. I'm just saying that's one.
No, what you guys
small
are saying
percentage.
is very logical. Absolutely. I don't disagree with it. And I need to correct if I misspoke. If I said broken families, I thought I said broken homes, and how I classify broken homes is drugs,
Okay.
abusive kids, all of that stuff as a broken home because the parents
maybe you
cannot
didn't-
provide a stable
Yeah.
home.
You did.
All of that is one category to me in that sense.
Okay.
I should have been more specific, honestly, but that's how I categorize that. Is a broken home is all of those categories put together.
Okay. Well, no, I think you did say broken home, and then
Just that computing.
yeah, no, and then I agree with you. I think we're on the same page there. Yeah,
Agreed.
agreed.
But someone did make a comment in there that when they're talking about abuse, that's probably one of the bigger causes, and I want to acknowledge that it probably is. But it comes back to parents. Like a lot of this comes back to being like, if you want to talk about the transgender stuff and all of this other stuff with Dr. Seuss and with the kids, it all comes back to parents being engaged and actually being parents. And I think that's where the education comes from, but it's hard to go and tell an adult right now, hey,
Right.
you should go and do this, because it doesn't work. But the kids, they're like Joshua said, their brains are like sponges. They're like sponges. They'll absorb and they'll take in everything. And I think that is our opportunity. I don't want to take away options to make things worse, but I think that if we can work with education and start going that way, how we do that, that's a tough one to answer. But I think that is the ultimate way we get back through and going through a solid cycle. Now, let's be honest. Abortions will go down if we're not going to be having sex and everybody's just gay, because it's not going to work. And that's where things are talking right now. Like you have the Gay BC's book. Like
Right.
that
ABC.
solves the problem
Let's turn
too.
everyone gay, and that's our
Right.
population control.
I have another point that I was while you guys were talking, I was having a conversation with my husband. I keep trying to tell him to come on because he has so much information. So I asked him if he thought that if abortions were to go away, would he think that there would be an overwhelming amount of kids in foster care? And he said, no, I don't. He said, because I think people in general are good people. And there are so many people here in the United States who want children. So I think that people would, I don't think necessarily the numbers would go up. And then, so I was like, oh, pretty interesting point. And then he said, well, just point in case, like myself and my husband, we've raised 3 children that were not ours. So anyways, and then he said, well, I think that when you talk about, he said, if you're talking about abortions, because he kind of heard some of the comments, and he's like, if you're talking about it, you have to kind of also bring up the point that Planned Parenthood was, his belief is Planned Parenthood was created to get rid of those children. So he said it was, so he says Planned Parenthood was created to get rid of Black children. And he said, if you look at who Margaret Sanger was and what she stood for, she was like a known activist. White power. Every time
Do it again. How'd it go?
white power. I just
I'm-
thought.
I have to
just
say
thought
I'm
Dave
offended.
I just,
He's like, that's not how you do it.
I just saw Dave Chappelle thing.
I feel like you threw out the Black Panther fist and said white power.
Wait, now it just I'm not a white supremacist. But so anyways, he was talking about that. And I was like, well, I know that that's been kind of one of the topics. And I was looking into Planned Parenthood. And if you look at where the Planned Parenthood, where a lot of those are, they're in a lot of minority communities. So I'm thinking like, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I think I don't think their intentions, like from what I read, I don't think their intentions were ever really good, to be honest. Like, do you guys have any thoughts or opinions on that?
Well, I know that Joshua, he
There,
was
there,
he
yeah.
was away thinking. I'm pretty sure he's got something.
Yeah.
Something.
So it's funny that you brought up Margaret Sanger, because I was just about to bring that up, and then you kind of beat me to the punch. But so Margaret Sanger was, you're absolutely correct. Margaret Sanger was a known racist, but Margaret Sanger was also a feminist, and she had a bunch of mixed variables of viewpoints when it came to abortion. Margaret Sanger also looked at abortion as the liberation of women. She said through abortion, we will no longer rely on men. It was like that. It was that alternate option. And it was also a liberation to free a more, a broader view of sex, if you want to word it in that way. But I think the thing that happened with the abortion is a lot of people get the Margaret Sanger thing confused, because yes, she was a racist, but during the time of FDR, there was a lot of, it was either, no, I believe it was Woodrow Wilson or FDR. I'm not 100% accurate because I often get them confused, but that was a time that was heavily practicing eugenics. And eugenics is a separate thing from racism. I mean, I don't like eugenics neither, but eugenics is a little bit different. And when the topic's being discussed, you got to be specific on that, because eugenics is basically the study of determining what human beings are going to actually contribute to the world and which ones would be better off getting exterminated. That's eugenics.
Well, he kind of talked about, he actually was talking about eugenics too. And I was like, come on. He's like, no, I'm having drinks downstairs with my daughter.
Yeah,
I was like,
eugenics.
damn
Yep.
him.
Yeah, so that's I think that's one of the things that happened with the abortion topic. But there was also something else that I was thinking about that I picked up from what's in it the dude the bed, I can't see the name,
Casey.
Casey. So he brought the good point about the population. I just wanted I this is just a thought. I don't have a really definite answer. I wanted to get people's opinions on this. Do you think that the fact that abortion makes sex more lackadaisical because you have that option, do you think that could play an actual role in the population increase instead of a decrease, because more people are having sex so rapidly, knowing that abortion is a possible option, but whether or not they choose to actually obtain that abortion is currently their decision, and it's a conflicting decision at that. Could that possibly play a role into the population increase, even though it's designed to keep the population down, so to speak?
Absolutely. That's why I said even if 50% of the abortions would add an extreme amount of numbers to foster care and other systems, right? But there's no way you can judge that. You would have to remove abortions and see what would happen. But you are forcing people to make logical decisions in that scenario. And it would work, but it is a lot to risk at the same time. And so as a society, we would have to come together and be like, do we want to take that risk? And what is our plan if it goes bad? It'd be tough.
It is. It's a gamble. It's a gamble, and you really can't get a definitive answer on that topic. It's like I get the worry of like the population boom, but I also start to get the sense that the solutions that they are promoting for this population boom, I mean, they can say whatever they want. They can bring up the rape topics and stuff like that. And like I said, I feel for that. But when you look at the percentages, you can't. Anyone that actually does their homework, looks at those percentages, knows that is just, forget it. You know what I mean? So if it is for the population control, then it has to be acknowledged and it has to be talked about with some responsibilities. And is it actually helping to keep the population down? Is this actually making the population have even more sex, knowing that that option is available? Is at the same time, is that simultaneously preventing the nuclear family from increasing? Because men no longer look at women as a potential wife. Men no longer look at the value of love and family, and now they look at women as a potential risk. But what if I get her impregnated and she breaks my heart and she terminates this life? I'll never be the same.
Yeah.
What if she gets impregnated and we don't work out? I got the financial burden of child support. She uses the child against me. It throws too many angles on the overall view, and it just complicates the whole situation entirely, in my opinion.
Hey, so
I agree. I don't disagree with that.
real quick, we have a question for you, Josh. We made a bet on the side. Where are you from?
New England, like Boston area.
We were both.
That's right.
And our-
Women.
Damn.
He said Boston area. That's
Anyways,
right.
stop. I want to introduce Smokey, aka Suni Blakes. Welcome. Or is it Suni Blakes, aka Smokey?
What's up, man?
Really gave her a drum roll too.
Yeah.
Can't believe that.
I'm special. It's all right. I know.
We know that.
Chris, don't you start.
Hey,
I mean,
if you guys didn't hear last night, Suni is a white man in a black girl's body.
stay on topic, Chris.
Josh, this is Suni. Suni, this is Josh.
Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure.
Hello.
He got a laugh too.
I didn't say it. Austin said it.
Anyways,
Back to the Planned Parenthood thing. Being like, so I think we had one. We had one. Anyways, I think
One
Planned
what?
Parenthood. Planned
Tracy?
Parenthood. Yeah, we had one.
yeah, over on the other side of town.
I know they had one here. I think they were all downtown.
The one here is also it's not downtown, but it's on the other side of town.
Oh,
by
it was
Manteca
off.
High.
Yeah. Still, yeah.
Or in
Older part
that
of town.
area. The older part of town. Yeah. Yeah. I was actually thinking about that earlier when
I
you
don't
guys
know.
were
Maybe
talking about
because
it.
we're older, I don't really pay attention anymore. Because
I didn't realize like what part of town it was in though.
yeah,
I just knew that it was there. I went there, but I went there. Anyways, my whole point is I didn't realize what part of town it was in until like
so they started saying it.
Yeah, until now I'm like, oh.
You know, but you know what though? Like, so I remember where the Planned Parenthood was where we were at, right? And I was like the only person with a vehicle at the time. And so
Where's this going?
I dropped my friend off and they would go in, or I dropped a couple, like they would go in and they would just get bags full of condoms and whatever. And I'll be the first one to say, like, I have no problem with my life and how I grew up. I wasn't sexually active until I was like 17 and a half, 18. Girls were not just, I had to help my mom raise my brothers. Get out of here. I had to help my mom raise my brothers. I was working. It was, I had my plate full. So that for me was not on, it wasn't on the table. It just, I had other priorities. My point to it is that, but I used to drop them off and they would go in and get them. And I remember thinking like, they're just handing these out to kids. And I remember being like 16 pulling up and they would run in and just get a bag.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a free for all. They promoted, to me, it was promoting, go ahead and go be sexually active. And that, you know, that's, I think teen pregnancy, like I did see a decrease. I remember growing up and I was in middle school.
Increase or decrease?
Decrease. I remember in middle school, there was like a whole bunch of people that I seen coming out of high school that were pregnant.
That's true.
And then when I got to high school, there was a
23?
decrease.
Yeah.
There was a decrease in the amount of people that I seen pregnant in high school. But they're providing protection, but it's kind of like, you know, like I said, it's a free for all. I don't think that they were really helping out.
It's a catch-22.
Yeah. And I definitely know that they weren't telling the parents of these kids, like, hey, you know, we want to make sure you sign in. We want parental contact to let, you know, because what we've done in society now is we said, okay, we're going to give these underage kids all these rights. Like, you don't have the right to drink. You don't have the right to smoke. you don't have the right to do certain things, but you have the right to now change your sets, and you have the right to make a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what the hell are we doing? And
Aren't those like some of the most important decisions
I
you
think
make
so.
in your life, though?
But back to Planned Parenthood, I think they enable and they, well, I don't know. I'm starting.
You're getting excited?
Yeah, and I'm starting to think I'm part Puerto Rican because I'm starting to sound like Chelly sometimes.
Facts.
And anyways, my
You
point
were
is,
loud before you met me, though.
huh?
You were loud before you met me.
You guys are wearing off. Yeah, you're right.
I know.
Anyways,
I was loud the whole time. It's fine.
no, yeah, but Planned Parenthood, like I said, I think they enable and they promote it, and then at the same time,
Yeah.
they're going back
And
and
they control it.
they control it. And if you accidentally have one, they're there to clean up the
They'll
mess.
help you. Yeah.
Like,
with
we're going to help
open
you get in the
arms.
mess, and then we'll help you clean it up.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Planned Parenthood. I'm not a fan of any program or organization that
It works with the government.
well, not just that, but that talks to your kids
Oh, well, yeah.
and doesn't feel that you as a parent should have the right, even though you're responsible for that kid, and you can, depending on what your kid does, like, you can be legally responsible for them. Your kid don't go to school, truant officer comes to your house, who gets in trouble? Not the kid, but don't tell your kid nothing, don't take their cell phone away because that's their right. They could have sets, that's their right, or whatever it is.
That's so crazy.
This is where I go back to Josh. Like, you're right. It is a mess.
It is.
All these loops and
Suni, what say you?
Well, what are we discussing? Really? Like, we're
oh my
Hey, don't worry.
gosh.
I did the same thing. Hey, I gotta real quick. Hey, Suni, you could take my spot. I gotta bow out. Josh, nice to meet you.
It was
Casey.
nice meeting you too, man.
You are?
We'll talk again, huh?
Where are you going?
I have to go downstairs.
Oh.
I could hear the kids.
Wow.
Suni,
They're parenting
Sony.
themselves right now, okay?
yeah, and Shelly, I'll be back. We'll see.
Don't you judge us. They're all walking. They're all in school. They're fine. They know how to make sandwiches. It's Friday. It's only 8. We're good. My hell just justified myself.
You really did. So is this? Are we making comments on what we think about Planned Parenthood and such?
Oh, okay. So the title is conflicts of interest, having the talks that are difficult. Oh, sorry. About much that are difficult but much needed on abortion, father's rights, and all that implies. And right now we're talking about. Well, we were talking about Planned Parenthood and are they helping the situation or not helping the situation, as well as abortions and so on and so forth.
Mm,
I guess basically.
I don't think they're helping because they're only offering one solution to like stopping young people from getting pregnant, and that solution is birth control, and birth control means an abortion nowadays. Nobody talks about abstinence. Nobody talks about like proper sexual education and letting people know, like, look, you can get an STD. I don't even think we talk about that anymore. A baby can come from this. Can you take care of it? You can't just go erase a mistake. And that's what abortion has done. So it's just all a shit show. I think men need to have more rights when it comes to what happens. Me and Shelly were talking about this. I was bouncing some ideas off of her. Me personally, I feel like men should have the option to opt out. I do. It's unfortunate, but women need to learn consequences as well. This is what happens when you mate with an irresponsible person. You didn't get to know the person. It almost seems like we're not holding anybody accountable for anything. You can just go erase the mistake and everybody go about their lives and you can continue doing the same thing. So we're going to keep perpetuating the same result. Holding people accountable and offering men's rights, I think that would change a lot of things.
Yes,
I do.
I agree.
I mean,
I agree with that. I 100% agree with that.
He should be able to say, I don't want to take care of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. If I could add something to that, I think the problem is that you, when people go about this topic, they often try to say equal rights or equal say, but you can't really give an equal say to a decision amongst two people who want to separate from each other. So then it comes down to, well, who has the overriding say or who has the most priority for this say. So I think the problem lies within, people keep trying to view this topic as trying to find that right answer or come to that almost impossible conclusion of who does have that overriding say, and no one does. You can't really. Every side has good points and bad points that kind of equal it out. So my whole stance on this, because I kind of, this was a while back when I stated this, my whole stance on this is, if we know that these conflicts are there, why aren't they discussed as often as they should be? Number one. And if these conflicts are there, and abortion is an option, and I'm not saying to get rid of abortion. I know that's an impossible thing. It's never going to happen. It's always going to be there. But if it's not helping society as a whole flourish and function and keep, the nuclear family together and keep things moving so we can function as a civilization, then what can we do to prevent people from constantly having to rely on that option? That's what I started to get from this, because I was looking into it for a couple of days, and every time I tried to fall into, well, maybe the girl should have more of a say, then I found something about the man situation. Then when I went more to the man situation, then it was about that's the thing. And I started just saying to myself, like, there is no answer. And that's why this topic is still getting debated right now, because everyone's trying to find the answer that doesn't exist. There isn't one, because it's 50-50. It takes two people to create this child, and they could both have love attached to that child. So who is to say that one's decision should be higher and override the others when the love is equally split right down the middle? You know what I mean? It's impossible. It's an impossible situation. But I feel like the way they're promoting abortion on the scale that they're doing it is disastrous. And I feel like because society has gotten to this absurd point in this pseudo-like reality where people don't want to discuss these hard topics because of feelings that they never get resolved. Listen, these hard topics are uncomfortable to talk about. When you're doing something wrong in life and your parents talk to you about it, it's uncomfortable. You don't want to hear it. It might make you feel a little strange, right? It's uncomfortable. You're like, oh, I don't really want to talk about this right now. But you need that, because if you don't talk about it, you're going to keep perpetuating that behavior. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's such a major problem right now in society, man. You can't constantly say that rights are attached to emotions and constantly duplicate rights or attach rights to certain things that aren't rights, and they're more of like a living preference that end up actually overriding individual rights.
Agreed.
You erode society that way, and I feel like people from both sides, right, left, whatever, if you got an open mind and you're willing to accept and actually listen to somebody else's opinions, voice your opinions respectably, have an open mind, look at everything from a broader angle, not let your emotions overcome your rational thought, and actually have some intellectual debate and dialogue with people, that's how we will progress. If you get stuck into a one mind frame where you can only see and envision things that only align with your views, we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere, man. So I mean, that's pretty much where we're at, man. I don't know what everybody else's viewpoints on it. I don't think me personally, I'll say with confidence that no one can actually debate that there is a definitive answer on who gets the overriding say on abortion. You can't.
No, there's not.
Because if you just say that, then I agree with what Suni said. Then men should have the right to opt out in certain situations. Because
yes, they should.
Exactly. Because you're giving the woman the option to opt out of any responsibilities, but giving the man no say. And if he doesn't have say and she chooses to keep it, he has to man up and take on responsibilities for 18 years.
Yep.
So I mean, it's a sticky topic. It's crazy, man. What does everybody else think? Do you think there's
personal accountability? People don't have accountability. People are babies. You can go fix something, and then you get told it's okay, you made that mistake, and if you make it again, it's okay. Just learn from it. The 5-6 times that you did it.
Exactly.
I don't know. It's not a fun experience. It's not liberating. I don't understand why they celebrate it. I get what's happening. They are like, they disguise bad and terrible things as liberating, freeing things, and then they attach it to your emotions, and then you're more drawn to it, and you feel bad, and you start justifying why we're doing this, why it's needed. All reason goes out the window. All reason goes out the window. All reason has gone out the window in 2021.
Hell yeah.
Well, I think that, like, I agree with everything that everybody pretty much has said. Like, everybody has a viewpoint. I think Casey and I are probably like the most liberals on this on this subject. But I gave why I felt the way I felt. But that being said, I think that when someone in the comments made a point about having the option to have like the morning after pill, you know, because we're not going to say that things don't happen, right? Like, we know we live in 2021. People are promiscuous. Like, everything you listen to in music is promoting sex. It's promoting all these things. So I think that with the morning after pill, like, that is an option. Like, why are we not talking more about that as opposed to abortion always being the like end all be all? You know what I mean?
Well, it's an abortion. It's just in a pill form.
Well, that's what I'm. No. Actually, you take it the next day, so you didn't even have a child yet. It just prevents things from getting together, like all those cells from getting together.
Yeah, Dr. Chelly, please give us that whole explanation.
Right? Like, it's a bunch of liquid that's
Well, yeah. Technically, it is liquid.
Yes,
oh my god,
new
bro.
one. Yes, that's a new one.
But
That's
Come
a very
together.
dirty show.
you missed earlier because I was like, we were talking about STDs. Like, everything that you brought up, I like said that earlier. Like, I was like, well, you know, we have to start thinking about self-love and self-care. And I was like, especially women, like, I would think they're more careful because you can catch an STD quicker than a man can because you have more
Girl.
open parts down there.
It's internal. It is. Listen, I said this to my sister. I was like, do you realize when you lay down with somebody, you're allowing them inside of you?
Oh,
Why would you share that part of yourself with? And she's okay with random sex. She's like, what's wrong with casual sex? I'm like, gross, bro. Who do you think's gonna want to marry you and you got 1,000 miles on your cooter, bro?
That's because no one talks about it. No one talks about the importance or how sacred it is or how important it is or how sleeping and literally giving pieces of yourself to the different people that you don't know. No one talks about it because that's a moral standard. That's a moral foundation, which is out the window.
Well, maybe I need to start because damn, value your coochie. Seriously, put a price tag on it. If you want to be ratchet with it, put a price tag on it. Something.
Yeah.
Keep it to yourself for a minute.
All of that talk has not been talked about in a long time. That's why I talk about. That's why one of my things is love and light, because it's a constant thing because there's so much noise from society and the world around you about all these negative things. No one talks about self-care. No one talks about the internal and where that lines up. No one talks about faith. No one talks about where your heart is. No one talks about the moral high ground, like where you should be and where you should be standing on. Right now, it's about a free-for-all. Sodom and Gomorrah. If you want to really get down to it, Sodom and Gomorrah, go do whatever the hell you want to do, and it's fine because the government's going to be there. They're going to bail you out. They're going to help you out. They're going to stand by you. They're going to cheer you on to be your hype man. But really, that's the wide road. No one's talking about it because faith and spirituality is not popular right now. That's why. And even if you were to be like, look, at the end of the day, you could take, if you wanted to, you could take that out. And really, it's about being a good person and making wise choices, which, again, is not popular either right now. It ain't trending. So people like us have to make it trend.
Yeah.
Barb said,
Sorry, Joseph, go ahead.
Barb said, well, Cooter was a white person, LOL, just us. Well, according to Chris, Sunni is a white man.
So it's fine. She's fine.
He's good.
And it wasn't according to, well, okay. It wasn't according to Chris. It was according to Austin. And Chris just co-signed. That's all.
Oh, man. I just want to add something quick to that. So I think one of the things that gets overlooked when it comes to casual sex and responsible sex, I don't want to word it as responsible sex because, I mean, in this day and age, who can really define what responsible sex is except for basically the final end result of getting pregnant? So
Yeah.
when you say responsible sex, it's kind of a broad definition of it. But I think what people with, I'm assuming you have a conservative view like mine. I think what we fail to do, what we're starting to do, but what we're failing to do is we're not really enlightening people on what can come with responsible sex or waiting for that casual sex. You can find love with that. You can
Yeah.
find beauty in things that you never might have seen before. And it's not that you're saying that casual sex is bad. You're saying that you can get good satisfaction out of life in general from both. Neither one's bad. Don't let one override the other. You can have casual sex. Yes, I might be against it. I mean, before it, that's irrelevant. But don't let that override the fact that you can wait. You could meet a girl. You could really you could really honestly take your time to get to know that woman. You could fall in love with her. You know what I mean? You could actually have some sexual relationship with that woman that has other things attached to it that you won't get with casual sex. That's what conservatives have to stop targeting. We got to get some culture. We got to get some I hate like some jazz up in that. You know what I mean? Like we got to start getting some other things in there. We can't just be talking them same old responsibility talking points. Oh, you know, your budget talking points. Nah, we need some culture in our shit too. Because if not, we're just that no one's gonna want to hear. Young kids ain't trying to hear that. You know what I mean? Not trying to hear that. And that's what it is. That's a problem.
The meat and potatoes of life. That's what
Yeah.
it is. Meat and
Yes.
potatoes of life.
Yes.
What is exciting about love? What is exciting about a relationship? What's
Yes.
exciting about fellowship and having communication and communion with each other? Like again, moral foundations. We don't
Yes.
talk about it. It needs to be
Nah.
talked about on a much more consistent basis.
Yeah.
Like the difference between okay, let's so I'm not gonna like dress it. I'm not gonna make making love. Like the difference between having sex with someone you love and having sex with someone you just barely met or whatever. One is fleeting. One is for the time, for the moment. It's for right now, right? It's right now. That is gonna go away as soon as the morning comes. Because then the morning's gonna be, you're gonna be embarrassed. You're gonna be like, oh shit, what did I do? What do we do after this? The awkward, do you want breakfast? No, I gotta go to work. You know what I mean? Like that little awkward moment. And the difference between that and between having sex with someone you love and have a relationship and you know them, it's the intimacy. The deep intimacy that you guys have, that you have with each other, looking into each other's eyes, like it sounds awkward, but like physical touch, like something happens. It's a chemical reaction that happens when there's physical touch. That is scientifically proven. Go look it up. It's true.
Don't look in the eyes though. That's weird.
Yeah.
No.
I can't.
Don't look in my eyes, bro. Don't do that.
That is hilarious. You should have no problem looking into each other's eyes.
Look,
It might
he
be
tried
funny after a while because then you
he
make a
tried
funny
to make a joke. He tried to make a joke. I'm gonna put myself out there for a second. He's like, "Why do you close your eyes every time you kiss me?" I'm like, "We're right here. Why do I need to have my eyes open? That's weird." And he's like, "No, it's not." So then I started feeling bad. Like, is that like, are you supposed to open your eyes? Like, what happened? So one day I went to kiss him and my eyes are open and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing, bro?"
You were probably like, your eyes were probably hella big. Like, what am I supposed to
So
look
now I'm
for?
like, yeah, I don't want to look at you. I'm straight.
Aw, that was a traumatizing moment. I totally understand. I didn't whistle for 10 years. It's fine. For real. But so you get my point. It's like the little things that you can do with each other that you can't necessarily do with someone you just met. You have no idea the things they like. You don't know like the things that excite them, or having, you know, a moment between the two of you that no one else knows. Walking into a room across the room and seeing each other and be like, oh, yes, I can't wait. You know what I mean? Like, let me hug you, let me touch you, let me kiss you. You know what I mean? Like those things, those are adult things because kids don't fucking know what that shit is. Excuse my language, but they don't. They don't know that.
They don't. It's actually almost to a point where it's looked down upon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, not looked down upon, but it's almost like you don't need to do that. Like well, yeah, you don't need to do that. Like, it's not a point. Like, you could do it on your own, and yeah, you can. But there's also satisfaction in doing it together. Every king needs his queen. You know what I mean? It's nothing beats coming home to your husband and wife, man. You got your son running up to you, daddy. There's nothing better than that. Why would you
Heck
want
yeah.
to tear that down? That's why I lean more conservative. I feel like society's attacking that. Why would you want to take that away? Why would you want to take those core traditions away? Then what are we going to fall back to? Nothing. You know what I mean? So it's I feel like we got a lot of work to do, man. I try to stay on top of this as much as possible, man. At least the best of my ability. I mean, I like all of you guys. I'm glad Austin put me on to you guys, man, because for a little while, man, I was feeling like I was waking up alone in bizarro world on certain points. I'm like, what's going on? People are arguing about the gender of potatoes. Like, I'm like, this is crazy, man. I was about to deactivate all accounts, just disappear. Like,
No, we are all.
No, that's nice.
We all do shows, and we all talk about like different topics all the time. Sometimes we have to talk about it more than one time because some of our shows can sometimes go like 3 fucking hours. Like, we get deep and we get in there. So you're welcome here. It's when I met you, when I was talking to Austin, I was like, oh, like, this dude is dope. I was like, you need another voice out there, period.
Yes,
I'll
please.
work with you, Joshua.
Yes, please, because I sometimes feel like I'm really good.
I'll work with you. I'll be my
I sometimes feel
partner.
like I'm really
back.
good.
Oh, he's back.
Unless Casey shows up, and I'm so thankful when Casey shows up. So, dude, show up.
He left.
I mean, unless I don't count Suni, I don't count you. You're a girl.
I definitely
Feel
will.
special.
Huh?
Chris should feel special
Why?
because he was usually the only guy.
Oh,
For the most part, he was usually the only guy.
he is the only guy most of the time, huh?
Most of the time, that's what I'm saying. So he's usually the only guy.
Poor Chris. Stuck with all these chicks.
He's like, finally see another guy on here. Yes.
Masculine energy, let's go.
You can't say that, Suni.
Slow down, Suni.
It's needed. Sometimes
Let's
there's too much estrogen in the air.
Barbara asked if the kids are still alive.
No, they are. They're good. They're watching the movie.
Let's wrap up with final thoughts.
Okay. Who's going first?
You want
Does
me
it
to
matter?
go? I'll go first.
Go ahead, Joshua. Go for it, man.
So my final thoughts on this basically this complexity of abortion, if that's what you want to call it, is there's no right or wrong answer on it. If I could stress one thing to anybody that's watching this channel, is society has gotten to the point where everyone goes into any type of discussion with somebody with an opposing view with the trying to win viewpoint. Gotta stop. You gotta stop, man. You gotta just listen. Is this what's best for us? Do you really honestly think that that's gonna make society better as a whole? These are the targets that people have to start getting. You know what I mean? Keep those emotions out of it as best as possible. You know what I mean? Conversations like this are good. This promotes growth. This promotes real prosperity. You know, it's not about winning. We all live in the same country. We all share this land. You know what I mean? We need to do this together. You can have a different viewpoint, but we can still be neighbors, friends, family the next day. We don't gotta be so hostile towards each other. There's no point in that. It's absurd, man. You know what I mean? We gotta start talking about some of these things. People are avoiding topics, real crucial topics too. Not like they're just some small things you could just shrug off. Like some of these are major topics. People just avoiding them, just letting it go. You know what I mean? But that's pretty much my final thought on this, man. This abortion thing, I like it. I like that you threw it out there to me. It was challenging. You know what I mean? I was up for pretty much almost an entire night, the first night doing it, because I was trying to get it from the angle of trying to find right or wrong answer. I couldn't find one. Came to that conclusion that that's the actual answer, that there is no answer. But this was good, man. That's pretty much, I like this. I think this is a good idea for sure.
It's on you. Go ahead.
You don't have any final thoughts?
Oh, no. Okay, I'll go first. All right. So, I'm gonna have to agree. Like, I think if it's, oh man, hold on, my bad. Final thoughts, and then I get interrupted. So, I think when we're looking at subjects like this, I really do think we got to stop and think, okay, what's natural, and talk from that point of view. Is this something that would happen if none of this was here? The other thing is I feel like a lot of people in the nation, we got to start taking personal accountability and personal responsibility for the actions that we take. And that's both men and women. I'm going to stress the men a little bit more because I don't want this to be a woman bashing session. And men, there are a lot of men out there that need to step up and take personal responsibility and accountability in what they do and who they do it with. And man, I had one more. Can't think of it now. Yep. If I think of it.
You wanna?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, we've been asleep for far too long. As far as just in general, but also as parents, as people, as a nation, as believers, we've been asleep for far too long. It is time for us to wake up and to stand on that strong foundation that we built, that is there, not that we built, but that is what we stand on. To not be afraid to speak about the important topics, not to be afraid to stand up for what's right, what's really right, and for the betterment of our children. Which all goes back and, to tie into what we've been saying all night, education, being able to talk to our kids. And hopefully over time that will help us educate generation after generation. But it takes people like us to work together as a community to get those topics out there. So wake up.
I thought about it. I remember. The last one. I honestly believe we have to stop agreeing to disagree. Like when we're talking, I understand. Okay, sometimes you agree to disagree, but on topics like this or on these major topics, and I'm not talking like you're at home bickering or you're bickering somebody at work and you just can't come to see eye to eye on certain things and you agree to disagree. These big topics, we have to stop agreeing to disagree. We have to find the middle ground and we have to start agreeing on something. If we find that middle ground and start agreeing on something, that's what I believe is going to progress us forward as a whole and not keep us divided. Final thought. Yeah.
The end.
Sony. I'm like, wait, you're muted, girl. You're muted.
That's all right. I just smoked. Just bear with me. I think that we should stress also the importance of women valuing themselves. I heard a quote and it really resonated with me. And this person said, women are born with value while men have to earn theirs. I was like, nah. Then I thought about it. Almost everything a man does is for the affection and love of a woman. A man is successful. He wants to settle down with a woman. He goes after a woman. Women don't necessarily have to go after or pursue men because we're already born valued. And we don't remember that within ourselves, which is why we have what a lot of women go through now. They look for value in other things that are like not worldly, but just like tangibles, instead of valuing themselves, knowing what you bring to the table, knowing what you have to offer, and valuing your body. Just that alone. Women don't have self-esteem at all. And a lot of it comes from dads not being in the picture. So you have fatherlessness. You couple that with lack of self-esteem because you don't really know the type of man you're supposed to look for, and you have a society of people that don't have self-esteem. I think starting there and you can't let people know they're valuable. They have to believe it themselves. But just putting that out there and letting people know you can value yourself and you don't have to do this. There are other options. If you choose to, fine. But if you want to value yourself and you want to be happy, then recognize who you are and whose you are, and then everything will be fine. Like, that quote stuck with me for real. I never thought about life like that until he put it that way. And I was like, wow, it's powerful. Those are my final thoughts.
For me, my final thoughts are I agree with a little bit of everything that everybody said. And I think that I am so glad to have people that have such very different opinions on it, and that we can all sit here and have a conversation and be respectful to one another's opinions. My final thoughts as far as abortion, I think that we need to start teaching, not start because I teach my children and I'm sure you guys do the same, but I think we need to start having more of these talks. We need to focus on loving yourself. We need to focus, we need to get back to the basics. I think in the same respect where there are women who do things with some bad intents, I think that can be on the other side as well. I think men also, when you lay with a woman, you know there's a possibility of something happening. You know what I mean? So I think that we all need to be held accountable. We all need to take care of our bodies, men and women alike. We need to do better for our future generations, for our children. If you are ever in a situation, again, I'm not judging people. I'm not telling you what to do. We are just giving you kind of our thoughts. There are other options. Abortion doesn't always have to be end all, be all. Those are just my final thoughts. Anyways, we love you guys and we're so grateful to have you guys with us tonight. Thank you. Don't forget to like and share. We will appreciate it. John Tisha posted the YouTube in the chat so you can click directly from the chat. We would greatly appreciate your subscription. It doesn't cost anything. It is free. So we would greatly appreciate it. Have a great night, and we will see you guys with another topic very, very soon.